Hi, welcome to Facing Stories with JR and Kelsey. I'm your host today, JR Jameson, the co-founder of the Facing Project. We are excited today because we have Yewande Austin with us, who we feel like is such a celebrity, and we are happy to have her on our show. Yewande served as the artistic director for Facing Sex Trafficking, Atlanta's Dirty Little Secret, and that's how she and I met. And I am so glad to have her as a guest for us to chat about all of her humanitarian work, the work that she did with Facing Sex Trafficking, and to share a bit about what it's like being a spoken word artist and to provide some words of encouragement for those of you who have aspirations to be spoken word artists but may still be finding your voice. To tell you a little bit about Yewande, if you haven't done your own research, she has had a career that has taken her from MTV to BET. She's shared the stage with the Black Eyed Peas, India RE, Maroon 5, but it's her humanitarian work and her work as an activist that's her greatest achievement. In 2006, she founded the Change Rocks Foundation, which is an organization that uses music to empower youth to break the cycle of global poverty. She's also the founder of the Global Institute for Diversity and Change, and her work as an artist has taken her to the Gambia, to Paris, France, to this spring to Nigeria, where she will work with young girls, helping them find their voice and empower them. This spring as well, she will be featured in the documentary Amazing Grace, Freedom Song, shot by the Horn Brothers, which consists of Kenny Leon, Denzel Washington, and Samuel L. Jackson. And last spring, she served as the artistic director for Facing Sex Trafficking, Atlanta's Dirty Little Secret, which was Atlanta, Georgia's version using the Facing Project model to help capture and tell the stories of those who were survivors of sexual slavery. So please welcome to Facing Stories, Miss Yewande Austin. Thank you for being here, Yewande.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm honored.
So I want to start out by talking about your music career. A bit about the background of what brought you into the music industry. Was this something that inspired you as a child? You always felt musical, or was it something that moved you to that industry?
Actually, I wasn't necessarily musically inclined. It's a bit of an odd story that most people probably wouldn't associate with me, but I was most definitely that shy kid, that introverted kid that just didn't seem to fit in anywhere. I was very blessed, though, to have parents that made sure that I had lots of books around me. And in those books, the pages of those books revealed a history that I wasn't taught in school and that most of my peers didn't know about. So very early on, I had this very clear idea that our humanity was so much different than what we were taught in school. Researchers have actually identified that over 70% of American history textbooks are inaccurate. There are so many omissions in the pages of those stories. Well, I found them in the books in my closet, and literally it was there where I was crafting this dream that I wanted to change the world. Reading the stories of Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, all of these incredible human beings that were enslaved and had the audacity to break free and to not only free themselves but free others, educate others, and left this powerful legacy that we take advantage of all the benefits today of the sacrifices that they made. Well, not too long after that, I was introduced to the works of Marian Anderson, Paul Robeson, Josephine Baker. I loved the stories of Josephine Baker. I just relished in this story of this little girl from the deep, deep South during the era of Jim Crow that wasn't accepted here, but went abroad to France and used music and dance and creative expression as a way to bring people together. And I said, I want to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but that's exactly what I want to do. I want to change the world, and I want to do it through music. You know, very early on for me, music was not something that I was necessarily inclined to do. My mother, like most of us as children, forced me to play piano. Dragged me to the theater to see performances of Leontine Price and to Eartha Kitt and so many incredible artists. Phyllis Hyman, who was my greatest inspiration. And I say she dragged me because, you know, sometimes as kids we can be a little difficult. But once I got into that seat, there was a whole new world that was opened up to me. It showed me the power not only of the human spirit, but the power of the voice. the power to be able to captivate people. And so much later on, after studying classical voice at Howard University and Carnegie Mellon Conservatory of Music, I went on a little adventure of figuring out how to craft music in a way that could captivate and inspire people while entertaining them.
Yeah. So tell me about the first time that you put something together and stepped out on that stage to share that voice that to your peers may have seemed very different than music they had been experiencing around them before.
That's a really, really good question, because do you know the very first song that I ever wrote was a song called Rufus, and it was about a homeless man that I met on a train in New York City. And I was captivated by this man because he didn't look like a homeless person that we stereotypically associate with the epidemic of homelessness, right? Mm-hmm. Wasn't tattered, you know, he didn't seem like he was inebriated, not somebody who mentally wasn't sound, all the typical stereotypes that we associate with him, right? Mm-hmm. He was a very strong man. He was a black man, about 6 feet 5 inches, seemed to have so much pride, and he stood up tall, but I could still tell that he was down. And I introduced myself to him, and I asked, you know, what is your story? Speaking of facing stories, yeah? And after we had this long train ride of talking, the greatest lesson that he taught me was that it doesn't matter where you're coming from. He said, I wasn't born to be in this position. I'm just in transition. And I wrote a song about him because it was so inspiring to me. It went like this. Saw Rufus on the train standing 6.5. He was taken in rags with hope in his eyes. Looked like he could be a star, but you know how looks are. And jumps to the chorus. Hold on to that train, Rufus. Don't know what's in store for you. Hold on to that car, oh Rufus. Know your time is coming through. So just hold on, hold on to the memories of your life when it was so damn good. Well, this is a song that when I first started, in Africa, was very, very popular. Whenever we went to them, nobody wants to hear nothing about no homeless man. Nobody wants to hear about that. That message, it makes people feel sad. It brings them down. People want music that's going to allow them to escape. And, you know, one record label after the next would say, you know, can't you just, you know, drop it like it's hot, like everybody else? Why can't you just fit in the box? Why can't you just do some house tracks and dance tracks, and you can save that social justice stuff for later? And I said, well, it's not me. It's not me. I don't know how to be anything else than me. And that's when I actually started my journey as an independent artist, when I realized very quickly, very early on, I don't fit in. And that's okay. I still have a voice, and I still have a powerful message I want to get out there. And that's really what started my music career, was realizing I didn't fit in, but that I could captivate people's attention to address issues that were really important to me that otherwise may not have been so appetizing.
And you've done that so well over time. I mean, clearly you have built a strong career around helping others find their voice because you found your own, and you stayed true to who you are as a person and as an artist. You've made it big. So you've been on BET, you've been on MTV, you've shared the stage with the Black Eyed Peas, with India Arie. Tell me about that moment when you stepped on that big stage for the first time, and you knew that you were able to impress upon people the voices of social justice and social action. What was that like for you as an artist when there was that, I've come to this big stage moment and I have this platform to share these stories with so many people?
I think it depends on what you call a stage. The moments that I performed with the Black Eyed Peas and Enrique Iglesias, Maroon 5, Jessica Simpson, I've opened up for a lot of major artists and performed in arenas from 5,000 seats to 20,000 seats. And those experiences were cool, don't get me wrong, but I couldn't really connect with people. I think that the more powerful experiences for me have been on the stages in Africa, in Malawi, where there are villagers that walked by foot for miles just to come and experience the music, and people that you saw had absolutely nothing, but they were elevated to another place, and we connected in a place that otherwise I never would have been able to, whether in recording or in a larger stage, or my recent experience in the Gambia, where I performed there, where there literally were thousands of young people who didn't have the money to buy a ticket to that performance, who, when I was pulling up to the venue, literally saw them forming a human ladder over the wall of the arena to help each other climb up over the balcony and into the arena so that they could just hear this music, and people who want to hug you and touch you later. And you know, when you see that tear fall from their face, you know that you've made a connection that supersedes money or titles or fancy things. But the power to connect one human heart to another is the most powerful experience I've ever had, no matter where that stage has been, whether it's been an arena or in Africa or even a village schoolhouse. I've had such incredible experiences teaching. We've now produced programs in 8 African nations, and through my foundation we have requests to produce programs in 9 new African nations. And there's not a time that I can remember teaching personal development skills or music in a schoolhouse where at the end of my lesson the kid don't let you leave. Yeah. You've heard me right, America and the world. You do have children around the world who are so hungry for knowledge. These are children that know that education is the only escape from poverty, to change and pursuing their dream, that will literally block the door and not let me leave because they want more. Teachers that want the same thing. Sometimes I'm working with teachers in the developing world that don't have much more education than the children that they teach. They want more. So I consider the classroom my stage as well, and those are my most powerful experiences.
Yeah. So looking at education, I know the work that you do around your Change Rocks Foundation, the Global Institute for Diversity. You go to various countries around the world. You've been to many African countries. You've taken it to Europe. And you work with youth, helping inspire them and empower them through all the ways you just discussed. But you also you take these programs back stateside, and you meet with college students across the country as well. You're often a keynote and inspirational speaker at various all-campus speaker events and conferences, and then you meet individually with classes. Tell me a bit about what you discuss with college students to help them figure out ways to find their place in the world and be future humanitarians.
Another really good question, J.R. Jameson.
Well, thank you.
My work here stateside is also very, very important to me. I am very blessed that I am brought into the lives of many of these students early on in their collegiate career, where they're still trying to figure out who they are and who they want to be. And academia most definitely serves its purpose in providing students with the tools that they need, giving them the books, exposing them to areas that may be of interest for them to build a career. But I find that often in academia, in training future global leaders, the conversation about doing something that makes you happy is missing. A conversation about what brings you the greatest joy, about the legacy that you want to leave behind. That's often completely left out of the conversation of what it requires to be a global leader. And so I'm very lucky to come into their lives at a time where I can talk about not only tapping into what brings you joy, but in leaving that legacy. What does it require? Very often it requires not only for us to be focused on the work that's right in front of us, but also unlearning some of the things that society has taught us about based on our ethnicity or our sexual orientation or our gender. We have been trained from a very early stage in our life that this is the box in which you are expected to fit, right? Media also reinforces this idea of what is beautiful, who is deemed as being intelligent, who can make the most money. Well, I also encounter a lot of students who are very first generation college students. What does that mean for them? They are coming to the table with a wealth of doubt and fear of whether they can make it. And what we teach them is very simply that it's because of your differences and your experiences and maybe even your challenges in life that have best prepared you for success. We just need to sit down and map out a plan. How do you bring together, how do you tell this story of who you can be based on what brings you joy, based on your adversities, but also tie that into the dream? Yep. That's where I'm very, very blessed to intersect with students. I'm currently a lecturer in residence with the Virginia Commonwealth University, where I'm working specifically with pre-health and professional health students. So it's, 2 parts empowerment programming, 2 parts getting to what brings you joy, and then the other most important part is training them to be culturally and socially competent. But perhaps most importantly, to learn that they are not just in the business of healthcare, but human care. I think that's what all of my work really comes down to, is how can we better communicate from one heart to another? Because it's the only way that we find value in life, right? The only way that you can find value and really impact change, just like what you're doing with the Facing Project, is by finding a connection from one human to another.
That's right.
Go ahead.
And building empathy around that too, and helping build understanding, even though sometimes it may be across difference.
Yes.
Because even if it is across difference, it's that in between where the learning actually occurs, and that's what we try to achieve. I love about you. That's what you definitely are achieving. It's interesting to hear you talk, because one thing Kelsey and I have been looking at recently is what we call the axis of awesome. And we say if we ever write a book about the axis of awesome, please shoo us out of town, because we do not want to write a self-help book about the axis of awesome. But it is a tool that we share with college students that falls right in line with what you were saying, is that sometimes when we look at our greatest challenges, but we also compare that to what is our greatest skill, along with what is our greatest passion, where those points intersect, that's our axis of awesome. And for us, that was developing the Facing Project, because Lucy and I, both as writers and as community activists, looked at ourselves and our skills, the ways in which we wanted to intersect and help people tell their stories based on our own past experiences of being the other in some instance. And so that's how we found our voice, and we use that to help students and sometimes faculty and staff who are still trying to find their own voice as well. Because they've been boxed into what it means to be in higher education and a faculty member, to help them find that voice. And so I love, love, love the work that you're doing with that.
I appreciate that. JR, we need to work on developing that course. How can we do that? The course is based on, I dread how society teaches us if we don't fit in the box, then there's no place for you. But it's the reality that it's everybody that fits outside of the box that are the ones that have created a legacy, and a legacy that many of us are often trying to repeat in some way. That because of our differences, that's what makes us unique. That's what leads to creating a blueprint that others will try to duplicate for generations to come. But yet there is this overwhelming message from all points. Students are overwhelmed by images portrayed in media and publications and at home.
Yeah.
If you're gay, then you don't have a place in my home. If you don't pursue a doctoral degree, then you don't have a place in my home. How about all of the other aspects of what make us unique and creating a degree around that? I'm going to be the first person to do that, I think.
I will be there cheering you along and helping validate it the best that I can. And what's interesting is I heard Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black speak recently. She's an absolutely amazing speaker, and she talked about shame and how when society tries to box us in and we fit outside of that box and we don't necessarily look or act like all the others around us, people try to make us feel guilty about that.
Yes.
But once we accept that guilt, it becomes shame, because we've admitted to ourselves that we are different and we're not good enough. And there are so many youth in our country who exist in that world of shame, where their voice is being silenced in many ways, and they're often pushed even farther outside of that box to what we would hope would be where we'd want them to be creative and express themselves.
Yes.
But in those instances, they may not even be able to swim to the area to find those who are like them in that way. So I love, love, love when you go to Africa, to different countries in Africa and Gambia. Tell me about these experiences with the Global Institute for Diversity and also the Change Rocks Foundation. What have been some tangible products you've seen over the last 9 to 10 years of doing this work from girls you've helped inspire in these countries who now maybe 9, 10 years out from their first experience with you and the programs that you offer?
My work with both organizations is an ever-growing, ever-changing experience.
Mm-hmm.
There was a young lady at a lecture that I gave today to a group of high school students that asked me, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned about yourself in developing a foundation? And I told her, if anyone had told me as a little girl with this wild and weird dream of changing the world, because what do you do with that? I didn't tell anybody for years, because how do you tell your mother, I'm going to change the world? I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just know that I had seen examples of what was possible, and that's all I needed. I saw what was possible, and that was enough. I told her that if I knew then all of the challenges that I would have experienced in this process of trying to help people realize their best selves, trying to give people the tools that they need to walk in their bliss, I never would have done it. But the greatest lesson I learned is that the only thing that is separating you from success is fear. And so in using music as a conduit to teach these critical life skills, which we know, depending on where you are born, if you are a boy, if you are a girl, depending on what part of the world you are born in, during what period of time, you simply may not have access to those tools to pursue your dream. And so in my experiences, the greatest lessons have been not teaching the music, it's what comes as a result of that. We show children quite simply what is possible. So when they learn that song, when they learn the dance steps, they don't understand that they're learning something on a broader scale. They don't understand that in singing a song that literally your serotonin levels are elevated to a point that it brings you joy. They don't understand that there is actual neuron development that is taking place in your brain when your brain is engaged and stimulated. Music being one of the most profound ways that the full brain can be activated. They don't understand that when you are singing a melody as simple as twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, in 4/4 time, that they're learning math. They don't understand that they're learning history and AIDS prevention skills and gender equality. They don't understand.
Hang with us for a second, folks. We seem to have lost our signal. See if I can get Yewande back. We do apologize.